the Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, since 1926, helping Vermonters to adjust to vision loss.
That's why we have the VA-BVI, so we can get out there and be independent, get jobs and work.
There are so many more things that you've got to do in life. The only thing you can't do is see them. But you can hear them, you can touch them, you can smell them. If you have any dreams and aspirations, you better get going with life because you don't want to waste another minute.
Adjusting to vision loss.
I'm Theresa Soares, and I'm here to talk about my family, in particular my son Joseph Soares, who's a 15-year-old now. I had a twin pregnancy in 2001, and I knew there was a risk for some preterm delivery just with twins, but I wasn't expecting them to arrive at 30 weeks gestation.
Trauma, physical and social.
I remember not feeling like anything was too significant in the NICU. Like I knew that they were small, they needed to learn how to breathe on their own, they needed to learn how to eat on their own. And it was day 41 of our stay in the NICU when the doctors did a standard cranial ultrasound. And that was the day that my life changed when they gave Joe a diagnosis of periventricular leukomalacia. I remember that being the worst day of my life. Never anticipated that there could be any severe complications, and when the doctor sat me down and said, we don't know what your son's future will look like, I broke down.
Shock and denial.
And at about 5 months, we were told that Joseph had definitely characteristics that would make them feel comfortable diagnosing him with cerebral palsy. And I remember my husband just being unable to say anything. We were both in shock. And then we had to go back and talk to our family and try to tell them what we had just learned when we didn't really understand it or what the consequences were. So PVL, periventricular leukomalacia, became part of our new vocabulary, and it started us on a journey in the special needs community.
Mourning and withdrawal.
The understanding that this was a lifelong thing and it wasn't going to go away, but we were still young enough in our process that we were still being hopeful that it would just be mild. I couldn't think about the future. I didn't want to try to understand it. I needed to try to absorb it, but I remember having lots of waterfall tears that day.
Succumbing and depression.
I was tending to be the one that would worry and express my worry and try to just figure out all the parts and pieces and what question do I need to ask the doctor. And my husband was kind of just taking on the role of being my caregiver. He was more worried about my ability to cope with this, and we just wanted to make sure that I wasn't too stressed out, which sometimes was good and sometimes it was frustrating because I wanted him to think about things the same way I was thinking about them. I wanted Joe to stay 2.5 forever because I felt comfortable with my team. I felt like I was getting the benefit of being part of his services. And I knew that when he turned 3 and started services in the school that he would be away from me for the first time and I wouldn't have that direct experience of seeing what they're doing, how they're doing it. I was really worried about me being able to carry over things at home without experiencing it directly. It's really difficult to send your child away for the first time, to trust other people to know how to read his cues and how to do his caregiving. I took a lot of pride in being his mom and being a good caregiver, and it was a big step for me to kind of put him on that little school bus for the first time and send him off across town to be away from me for a couple of hours. Big change for us, for sure. I had a lot of emotions. Like the physical therapist came one day and I just didn't like the way the visit was going, she walked out the door and I burst into tears. Like I was just like, this didn't work for me today. And sometimes that's going to happen. And, it might not have even been anything about what the provider was doing. It's just my state of mind that day. I kind of was feeling gypped with our twin experience because Parker didn't get the benefit of, pretending to be Joe or, telling secrets and, those kinds of things. So he's always kind of taken on sort of a caregiving kind of role, or, I need to make sure Joe's got his needs met. I think there's a little bit of jealousy sometimes from Joe. He sees his brother get on the bike and go to the next neighborhood to be with his friends, and Joe's been upset about that a few times. He's recognizing that, hey, I can't do those things by myself, and it kind of sucks.
Reassessment and reaffirmation.
We had a great team of early intervention providers that answered all my really ridiculous questions now that I look back at them. Were patient, gentle with us, not trying to project too far ahead, just trying to work with what we were faced with at the moment. And I'm really thankful for our experience to happen that way. I never had any medical providers or professionals try to do the crystal ball thing with us. So we never heard any can'ts or won'ts in our world, which I think was a lifesaver for our family, because I could have stuck onto a negative comment and really just shut down. So I feel lucky that I was able to continue to have hopefulness in our experience. I couldn't go back to work. Like, Joe's needs were too big. I didn't want him to be in childcare, and I was able to stay home for 3 years, and I'm ever thankful for that time home. And then when they were approaching their 3rd birthday, I was approached by our case manager, our service coordinator from early intervention, and she asked me if I had any interest in doing service coordination for families in early intervention. And I just said, yeah, I need to not have my full day be all about caregiving for Joe. I need some adult time, and I'm going to try this and see what happens. And then realize, like, hey, this is a really awesome way to kind of give back from our experience. And it feels really good to, have some experiences personally that I can share out with other families and help them kind of along their path.
Coping and mobilization.
The TBIs have continued to be part of Joe's team and very critical, especially for academic reasons. He needs to be presented with materials at a certain size, with a certain clear background, certain fonts for reading. They need to be presented in the proper field so that he can see them. He doesn't have a very good inferior field, so things need to be kind of upright and available. To the left side is where he has the most vision success. But his vision has changed over the years and improved, and I think that's a lot to say about all the accommodations that have been available to him in his school years, so that he's had a chance to improve his vision and kind of move up that CVI scale. I see his vision now as one of his strengths, and sometimes he surprises me by like doing things like read the clock on the wall. I didn't know he could do that until just a couple of years ago, and you ask him what time it is and he turns and he looks at the clock, and with his communication device he sometimes tells me it's 25 after, Mom.
Self-acceptance and self-esteem.
We were going to enjoy our boys for who they were, and I think that coping thing at that stage was what kept us going. 2 boys really enjoy each other still, which, there was a time when I was a little worried about their, relationship, but they're sweet to each other and they're understanding of each other. And Parker understands where Joe's needs are, and he understands how much help and support he needs. But he likes to know what's happening for Joe, and he likes to see Joe gain little skills and be successful. So it's kind of fun. He just beams with the attention, and I think he's a lot like me, and that's like, I'm dealt this hand and I can do some positive with this. But never forget that your child is still your child. Having new information doesn't mean your child is a different person. It just means that there's a different way to navigate your path. It feels really hard right now, but it's going to be okay. You just need to make sure that you're accessing the right people to help support you, and to be able to be kind of a supporting person just feels really good.
If you or a loved one needs assistance coping with vision loss, contact the Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, 802-863-1358. Or to learn more, go to our website, www.vabvi.org.
Also, from our website, you can obtain a copy of our booklet titled Educating Students with Visual Impairments in Vermont at www.vabvi.org.
Adjusting to Vision Loss, produced by the Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Narrated by Roy Lloyd. Videography and editing by Mike Quinlan.